I still write the cards that go out with every order because it makes a huge difference in terms of customer service and feedback and reviews on the back of that.
It's the e-commerce master plan podcast, here to help you solve your marketing problems and grow your e-commerce business. Cutting through the hype to bring you inspiration and advice from the e-commerce sector and beyond. Here's your host, Chloe Thomas.
Hello and welcome. It's great to have you here. Thank you for hitting play and choosing to listen to one of our inspiring guests. A little shout out before we get started. So huge thanks to Lucy Jeffries from Bearkind Socks. Lucy introduced us to this brilliant guest. Thank you so much, Lucy. And if Lucy and Bearkind sound familiar, that's because she was a recent guest on the show too. So this is another of our fashion episodes this month. And this time we're talking to a phenomenal fashion person, a lady who is busy selling underwear in a super sustainable, although we may rant in this episode about the word sustainable, in a super sustainable way. She's got a very values-led business, and she'll be sharing about how she ended up getting to the point she's got to, and then we'll be getting pretty deep into how you go about scaling a values-led business. How do you maintain those values as you grow? What are the key decisions you've got to make? We will be getting into all of that. Hugely inspiring interview ahead. Make sure you listen to the end of the episode because my guest is sharing some super practical, clever advice in the top tip section at the end. And of course, if you listen to the end, you'll get my take on it all too. If your tech stack is becoming a bottleneck to growth, it's time to replatform, and you should check out Shopline. Shopline is the modern commerce platform that's disrupting Europe as one of Asia's leading e-commerce platforms. Whether your bottleneck is setting up more sales channels like social commerce or expanding to new markets globally, Shopline takes care of everything from store setups, checkouts and payments to logistics and more. With single-click migration and out-of-the-box tools, they're there to help. The best part about it, you don't need to pay until your site is live. Here in the UK, they power brands like In The Style and Everything £5, whilst in Asia, they're the platform of choice for huge brands like Lego and Muji. If you want to scale, it's time to book your free trial or have a chat with one of the Shopline team. Find out what Shopline could do for you via ecmp.info/Shopline. That's ecmp.info/SHOPLINE. What lies at the heart of your profitability? Making the right decisions about your inventory. Jeannie is here to help you start making better inventory decisions fast, with smart reports that anyone can understand, so you avoid the pain of stockouts, overstocks, and dead stock. Jeannie offers fast-growing Shopify brands intuitive inventory management that doesn't break the bank, and which you can get set up in minutes rather than weeks. Intuitively track, analyse, plan and order inventory with one platform. Join brands like OneWith, Just Wears and Tent Sweat by taking advantage of this special deal for e-commerce masterplan listeners. Get 30% off for the first 2 months by going to ecmp.info/Jeannie. That's ecmp for e-commerce masterplan.info/Jeannie, Genie. So ecmp.info/Jeannie to get your inventory in order. And now to introduce our special guest. Sarah Jordan is the founder and CEO of Y.O.U Underwear, sellers of beautifully designed, ethically manufactured and eco-friendly underwear who are making the world a better place one pair of pants at a time. They're also the UK's top-scoring B Corp and the top fashion B Corp brand in the world. Founded in 2016 and launched in 2018, last year Y.O.U Underwear sold £250,000 via their Shopify store and physical store in Oxford. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, Chloe. Lovely to meet you.
Great to have you on the show. Huge plaudits from me and praise from me for getting such a high B Corp score. I can only imagine how much work that was.
Yes. Thank you, firstly. One of my proudest achievements, I think. But yeah, a whole chunk of work And we are recertifying actually this year. So it's all coming back around again. You have to do it every 3 years.
Oh, well, good luck.
So I know.
Because it's certainly, at the moment, in B Corp, you end up writing the rule book in some ways for how to do it. It's not like there's a map of, this is how you get full marks in this category. And it's easy, especially in the fashion space. So very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a process. It's a journey. Enjoy the journey. But yeah, it's a it's a big one.
Cool. You have a super impressive marketing CV, mainly or originally, I suppose, in the charity and the publishing sectors. So how did you end up starting an e-commerce brand that sells underwear?
Complete pivot is the best way of describing it. Well, completely accidental, to be honest. I was, as you say, background in publishing and education and then charity sectors, looking at marketing, e-commerce, strangely, at the time, but also how you could use technology for good in those sectors. Turned 40 is the real reason, and was volunteering in Uganda as part of doing something a little bit different, working for the Uganda Marathon and working with community groups out there, and basically discovered the problem of not having underwear and what a significant impact that had on the women and girls locally. So not just hygiene and health and those kind of associated issues, but actually access to education and the impact that that had by missing up to a week of school. So when you've got your period in particular, you can't go to school if you don't have any pants. And that's 25% of your education just because of something that's really simple. And that just struck me. So in my background of education, I know how important it is for girls and international development in the Oxfam sort of world. It was never something that was on my radar in terms of underwear having such a significant impact. And it just struck me and stuck with me from Uganda. And then started to, with no experience in that sector, the obvious thing is, well, we need to provide underwear. How do you do that? How do you make it? And then discovered all of the problems with conventional cotton, which is one of the world's most polluting crops. Natural fibre at one level, much better for you, particularly closer to your skin. But in reality, the level at which it's produced at, huge amount of pesticides, loads of problems. And then the fashion industry more broadly is about as destructive as it gets. So ended up kind of wanting to tackle all of those with a view to trying to tackle period poverty, basically, by providing underwear. So yeah, ended up with a business to do that.
It's kind of mad when you find one simple problem, theoretically simple problem to solve, and then you go, oh, right, so pants are bad anyway, fundamentally, because they're made of cotton. And then let's not get even started on the supply chain. And all of a sudden it becomes this crazy problem. So I think it's amazing that you're solving it. And it's one of those things where I suppose you worked in the sector for a long time, but until you were feet on the ground, you didn't understand the problem. And I think that clearly in that scenario, it made a big impact. But I think that makes a big impact in a lot of businesses. If you don't actually go and see what's going on, you don't realise what the problems are.
No, not at all. There's a definite advantage of not knowing what you're doing in that sense, because you can ask the questions and you can do it differently, which I think is one of the advantages that we've now got, is particularly in the manufacturing, in the supply chain. It's like, well, why do you do it like that? Why is it so destructive? Why can't you pay people, the basics, pay people properly? But the challenge is you don't see. And when you unpick and you lift the lid on some of that, you really then understand the breadth and depth of the challenges. And trying to tackle those also unpicks all sorts on the back of it. So being sustainable or ethical or whatever kind of words you use, that then has an impact across everything that you do as a business, because you can be incredibly destructive or incredibly positive in the impact that you have, and every decision comes back to that. So the more, as you said, the more you kind of dig into it and get involved and actually working in that space, the more it opens up all sorts of other questions and challenges.
When you had that decision, right, we need to find a way of providing these girls with underwear, was it an immediate, we're going to make the underwear, or was it we're going to create a charity to fundraise? At what point did it become, we're going to sell pants to fund pants and we'll do it ourselves via a Shopify store?
I don't think there was one particular moment. It sort of happened kind of organically, for want of a better word, the irony, because seeing the problem and very tangibly going, I want to do something about this. Because I was working, so I'd left Oxfam, I was working for the MS Society and other charities in London. And I recognised the challenges of being a charity, essentially, in terms of that legal structure and reliance on fundraising. And I really didn't want to do that because I knew it was a relatively sort of short term almost. You get a bit of money, you could make a difference, but you've got to continually go through that cycle, public fundraising or grants or whatever. And that's a very strong line through the organisation all the way through. And that's really hard. So it was more, okay, well, providing underwear was a challenge in the sense, or making it. Once I discovered, as I said, those broader challenges around the fashion industry, it's like, I can't just go and buy stuff that is made. I didn't want to sort of empower on one end and exploit effectively on the other. Therefore, we had to do it properly. Therefore, we just ended up going back through that journey until we found a manufacturer that we trusted and was doing it properly, but then it was kind of making our own stuff rather than buying it from somebody else, because we wanted that. I really wanted the control and transparency to make sure that we were doing it in the best way possible. And the business sense was, well, let's try and make this sustainable. Sadly, this problem isn't going to go away. It's only getting worse, if anything. Therefore, we want to have something long term that will be able to continue to tackle the issue, make a difference, have the impact, and a sustainable, in the broader sense, financially viable business is the best way of doing that. So we kind of skewed away from the charity as a legal structure, more to literally to a limited company, but building in that kind of purpose and impact at the start of it as a social enterprise and then as a B Corp later down.
I suppose it's that things that you think, oh yeah, well, surely fundraising would be easier, but actually, as you say, the constantly having to fill the pot is a huge amount of work. So you could put that purely into asking people for money, for want of a better phrase, or you could put all that time, energy, effort, skill into fixing the other problem you found, which was the fashion industry. So you, by making the right decisions at the beginning of the process or in the early days of the process, you will have far more impact and create a far more literally sustainable, in terms of it will keep going, business and impact.
Yeah. And I think you can sort of 5 years down the line, join the dots and make it sound a lot more strategic than it necessarily was. Because again, not knowing, coming from a completely different sector to fashion or manufacturing, it almost ended up that way. Some of the decisions were very conscious in terms of like the fundraising, the charity side, and trying to create a business on the back of it. But some of it was it just happened because once you discover something else in terms of a good way to do it, or you build a relationship, or you make a connection, or on the flip side, you discover that there's a real huge problem there, it almost leads you down that route. And I think part of it was kind of very clearly knowing what I did want to do and what I didn't want to do. And part of it was just that discovery and kind of going, oh, okay, we've now ended up with... And that's certainly the way the business has kind of grown and sort of getting established in the last couple of years is, well, we want to be inclusive in our sizing because that's just fair. We want to have representative models in our imagery. And so it's real people, it's all shapes and sizes and everything else. Because again, fashion is really bad at that. And it doesn't help with people's self-confidence, body positivity, mental health, when you just see super skinny edited models who don't represent what we all actually look like. And therefore, but again, that wasn't sort of part of it at the start. That's just been, you see the opposite and go, well, I don't want to do that. So, and the business sort of ends up going on a squiggly journey on that basis.
I do find it especially fascinating when I'm talking to businesses who have started with a vision, with a mission, with values, whatever word you want to use to describe it, with a purpose, how obvious the decisions they make are as a result of having that at the beginning. And I think, we hear a lot about greenwashing and about, big brands going really bad, making very, very bad decisions. And I often think that's because they're retrofitting it into the business. Do you think you have a long-term advantage in the space, say over the next 10, 20 years, because you've built that in from day one?
I'd hope to say yes, in the sense of, and I think that's why we got such a good score in our B Corp certification. It was genuinely embedded in the business. We actually submitted, so if you don't think the process is, it is a process, you submit and you go through the verification, and we submitted with nearly 130 points, and we were one of the only ones that ever has gone up normally you go down through that. So as you verify and they kind of go prove it, we were doing actually a lot more than we gave ourselves credit for. And that's just because partly I personally am very values driven. I'm ridiculous on that. And our challenge now is how we scale the business and make it work that side. And that's my background in charities and education. And that's just the way I think. So that's definitely an advantage in we're not greenwashing, we're not retrofitting, and anything we need to do to improve the impact of the business, we can just do as well. So while we're scaling, we can make, it's kind of given us a really good framework. I think the disadvantage is there is the greenwashing, and a lot of people just don't know the difference because they do it very well. They have very big budgets and they're kind of convincing in some of it. So it puts a lot onto individual consumers to check that out and kind of go, well, they say they're doing a conscious range and it's better cotton and it's supporting people. And it's like, it's only when you know. So a lot of our job is to kind of do that education almost and say, well, actually, here's all the evidence, here's what we're doing. And I think people will catch up. For me, that's a really good thing, is not to see that we lose our competitive advantage. It's more that everybody is doing business in the right way. So I think that bit of it is a real strength if everybody starts to shift to a more sustainable, whatever that means.
I think you have the same feeling about the word sustainable that I do, that it's an utterly pointless word, but we have to keep using it because it's shorthand for whatever you want it to mean.
Exactly. It's always got the kind of air quotes around it.
Yeah.
It's like nothing at scale is sustainable, but yeah, the principle of doing it better. So if everybody does that, then brilliant. And I think that's our focus this year is very much on scaling now. And it's also on how do we simplify that and simplify our message to focus on the kind of period poverty bit. Because for me, the basics of manufacturing well and fairly and paying people should just be a baseline. That's how you work. And the imagery and positivity and support for kind of customers, consumers, and that piece, and not airbrushing things, should just be the way that we all work. So those are just a baseline in the business of doing the best thing, doing the right thing. And then the bit that is our kind of USP is the giving back model to support people, keeping girls in education kind of piece. So if that helps in terms of businesses are going more in that direction, then for me, it's a good thing.
I find that fascinating how you are already aware that this chunk of what you do, all those bits you just said are just what we have to do. That is going to become table stakes in the near future, and everybody's going to be doing that. We already know that everyone's trying to do that, but everyone's going to reach that point. So you've made the conscious decision not to really push down on we're a sustainable underwear brand, but to go, actually, our USP is the period poverty piece and the supporting female education and all the bits that spin out of that. And that's what we need to put as our USP, because that's the reason why when a consumer goes, I want to buy better pants, better in the biggest sense of the word, then they're going to go, okay, here's 5 brands I could buy from. The period poverty piece really resonates with me. That's the brand I'm going to buy from. I think that's fascinating because I think you're ahead of the pack, I would suggest, on that from the conversations I've had with people.
Thank you. Hopefully. I think it's partly, I suppose, giving ourselves some credit in terms of we're actually recognising that. And the flip side is the marketing, the e-commerce at a very practical level in terms of you've got to keep this really simple for people. And one of the challenges that we definitely face and are guilty of, and it comes back to me again, is we do so much. I've got a slide when I do talks about the business that kind of details what sustainability means. And it's everything. It's every logo. It's every, the B Corp, the social enterprise. We've got all of that. We only use recycled cotton bags for our distribution, for the mailing, and the actual mailing bags we recycle and turn into earrings. There's like every level, but that is just confusing to people. The sizing, the positive messages, the fact that we don't age things for girls, we do it in Ugandan town knit. It's just confusing. It's brilliant for me, and I'm really passionate about it and kind of like, I don't want to not say that. But in reality, getting that across on the website can get in the way. So how do you strip it back and simplify? Yes, very much focused on the period poverty. And actually that is where we are different, because more and more businesses are coming through and doing kind of organic cotton or whatever it is. In reality, that is where we're genuinely unique. But also it is just about how do we simplify this? How do we improve that journey so that people can come in and just buy a pair of pants if that's all they want, and then they can find out as much about what we're doing if that's what they want. And we do see that with a lot of our customers. There's so much more interrogation of what we're doing than there is with other, for want of a better word, non-sustainable brands. It's really interesting. When you put your flag up and say, we're doing this, they really, really want to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and the detail of it.
It's kind of like making that decision of which messages go in the marketing, which messages, or the sales driving marketing as opposed to the education driving marketing, what goes on the homepage versus what's at the bottom of the homepage versus what's in the blog if you really want to find it.
Exactly.
But without hiding it.
Yeah.
But you said a couple of times that you have plans to scale the business, but you're not, and you're seeing that as a bit of a challenge given the complexity and how you've grown so far. I would imagine making decisions like that is going to make the scaling a lot more straightforward, especially when it comes to scaling the human part of the team. Is that something you're finding?
I think so, yeah. I think the more you simplify it, in reality, simplification is a lot harder than it sounds. When you're writing copy, when you're doing anything, it's always harder to make it really tight. But I think it's definitely something that we need to do, that we need to kind of be really clear. And almost as we get bigger, that's even more the case of being clear about exactly what we stand for, how we differentiate it, impact, and sort of everything on the back of that. So it is something that we're really conscious of and starting to feed in as part of the, going back to the kind of business piece, as we plan to scale and grow, how do we do that? We need to get all the basics of marketing right, better, improve those. We focused on kind of getting to this point almost and verifying and validating kind of every bit of that as the business model and the sustainability side and the impact, etc. Now we've got there, okay, we need to sort of up our game almost and go through and do the comms. And I think one of the challenges is, because that's my background, never look at a builder's house. Never look at your own. You see your website and you're like, oh no, I know this could be so much better. I know what we're doing and I know what we should be doing. And scaling the bodies behind the business, we just need more people at this stage to help us do that, because it's me and we're still doing everything, which is part of how we've got to this point, self-funding it, bootstrapping the business, but I'm definitely the blocker in there. So how do we grow that and make that?
I would say step one is to recognise you're the blocker. Definitely.
Done.
Have you made any decisions yet about whether you're going to outsource or hire? Because that I think is somewhere a lot of businesses get quite nervous, and it can be a real procrastinator to stop you from actually taking action, trying to decide whether you need an agency, a freelancer, or you actually need to bite the bullet and hire someone in.
So the approach so far has always been do it ourselves until we can't, sort of until we genuinely outgrow it, or that's not our expertise, a little bit of both. Freelancer, because of the flexibility. So there are, there were up until last week, 3 of us in the business, all part-time, all with other jobs, 1 freelancing, 2 of us earning money to put into the business. Because of the cash flow, because of the product business, it is just an intensive cyclical business in that sense, as you'd expect. So that's been how we've done it, and then gradually bring on the skills, bring on the expertise, or where it's just not the best use of my time to be doing that element. Going forwards, we've just actually employed our first full-time person in the business as of about a week ago. We did before lockdown, and then everything changed and we kind of pivoted back out of that, as most people did. But we've just got, and that's going to make a massive difference, because that's just having somebody there that can take a lot of that off me, so that can just do a lot of the doing. And then for me, it's really balancing where I've got the skills, where I add value, what my role should be, and how we resource that. Because up until now, all the investment has gone into the product. We now need to put it into the business in terms of people and marketing and sort of a bit of paid stuff on that basis, because we've done that very organically as well.
So the person you've hired, I have to ask, Sarah, are they freeing you up to do more marketing? Are they taking over the ops stuff? Are they taking over the marketing stuff? Which bits are you letting go of to have that freedom?
Mostly marketing and everything else. So where it's slightly shifted in the last couple of years is because we've got a physical shop as well. So we've gone from online to offline, and that just by its very nature sort of changes a bit of the business. So the first and consistent role or tasks I have outsourced is social media, because I just can't do it, don't want to do it, can't do it enough to actually dedicate it. And it changes, you just need an expert basically. And it's also quite a discrete area that's quite easy to carve out. Marketing more broadly. So as I said, most of ours has been organic. We don't do much, if anything, paid. So it's been maintaining that through email, social, blogs, etc., to kind of give us that presence, bit of PR, bit of outreach, a few influencer things, but not huge. And Sanya, who's just started with us, is taking a lot of that, but also supporting me more broadly on updating stuff on the website, so on Shopify, and generally any of the other, it's not admin, it's business support tasks. So as we look at wholesale and how we improve those channels, there's a whole stream of work around that. New product development, some of it needs to be me, but there's then a lot of running around. We're constantly looking at content, photo shoots, all the stuff with a product business and a fashion business that is a big overhead essentially in terms of how you run that and that continual cycle. Relationships with our suppliers, as I said, the shop is a big one, and that's changed the dynamic within the business. We still do all the customer service. We still do all the ops in terms of fulfillment. I still write the cards that go out with every order because it makes a huge difference in terms of customer service and feedback and reviews on the back of that. So we've streamlined a lot of it, but in reality, that's one of the areas that I'm going to kind of keep a bit more under my control because it makes a massive difference. People think we're a bigger business, and then when they get a message from the CEO, they're like, oh, they don't realize that it's like, well, it's me doing a lot of that. But it's been very much the plan of keeping it in-house until we can't, because that manages the costs so much more effectively, like storage, warehousing, fulfillment. We're definitely getting to the point where friends and family are no longer willing to hold all the boxes of underwear for us. And the roof may collapse and the shed is full, that kind of thing. And then look at outsourcing that, but keep the bits that add value to us and to customers, I think.
E-commerce Master Plan is supported by some of the greatest companies in the e-commerce sector. Here's a reminder of who they are.
If your tech stack is becoming a bottleneck to growth, it's time to replatform, and you should check out Shopline. Shopline is the modern commerce platform that's disrupting Europe as one of Asia's leading e-commerce platforms. Whether your bottleneck is setting up more sales channels like social commerce or expanding to new markets globally, Shopline takes care of everything from store setups, checkouts and payments to logistics and more. With single-click migration and out-of-the-box tools, they're there to help. The best part about it, you don't need to pay until your site is live. Here in the UK, they power brands like In The Style and Everything £5, whilst in Asia, they're the platform of choice for huge brands like Lego and Muji. If you want to scale, it's time to book your free trial or have a chat with one of the Shopline team. Find out what Shopline could do for you via ecmp.info/Shopline. That's ecmp.info/SHOPLINE. What lies at the heart of your profitability? Making the right decisions about your inventory. Genie is here to help you start making better inventory decisions fast, with smart reports that anyone can understand, so you avoid the pain of stockouts, overstocks, and dead stock. Genie offers fast-growing Shopify brands intuitive inventory management that doesn't break the bank, and which you can get set up in minutes rather than weeks. Intuitively track, analyse, plan and order inventory with one platform. Join brands like OneWith, Just Wears and Tent Sweat by taking advantage of this special deal for e-commerce masterplan listeners. Get 30% off for the first 2 months by going to ecmp.info/Genie. That's ecmp for e-commerce master plan.info/Genie, GENIE. So ecmp.info/Genie to get your inventory in order.
It's time for the top tips round.
Okay, I love this section because it gives me and our listeners some really quick ideas for taking our businesses to the next level. Sarah, are you ready for the top tips?
Yes.
Okay, the book top tip. If everyone listening to this podcast agreed to take Friday off and read a book to make their business better, which book would you recommend?
My first recommendation was Yvonne Chouinard's Let My People Go Surfing, because of the business and purpose behind it. However, in the last half hour talking to you, I would change that and say read a novel, read something that is not related to business, because actually time out is probably one of the most valuable things. Go and read something that inspires you in a different way and doesn't make you think.
I love that recommendation. I'm always very happy when someone suggests a novel. It's always a good call.
Yeah, whatever you're into that doesn't make you think about work, because that's the most creative time, I think.
Yeah, you've got to let the subconscious have a play around whilst you just enjoy a novel, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. The traffic top tip. Which marketing method do you either prize above all others or think doesn't get the press it deserves?
I think email. It's just so important for customer-focused comms in terms of the loyalty, the community. For us, that's really, really important. It's always the basic one that people just ignore and kind of send out a random newsletter. And we potentially are sometimes guilty of that. But actually we do less rather than more. But for me, it's underrated. Everybody focuses on social or influencers or whatever's new, but that's the solid one beneath everything.
Yeah, email the solid one beneath everything is absolutely spot on.
Quote of the day.
Yeah, quote of the day. Email the solid one beneath everything. But it's funny because it's so true. The tool top tip. Maybe a collaboration tool, a social media plugin, a phone app, or just a way of working. Is there a cool little tool you use that makes you and your team more efficient from day to day?
I've gone for WhatsApp. So for me, I thought about all the really useful new tools and technologies and stuff that we use to streamline how we work. In reality, what makes the biggest difference on a day-to-day basis is WhatsApp. Because we are remote, we've got a team that are scattered around the country and sometimes world, and we've got the shop team. And for keeping in touch, sharing, and that balance of personal and work stuff, it's brilliant. And just not email.
Do you have one WhatsApp channel for everybody or separate ones for different topics, or is it more of a one-on-one thing?
We've got both. We've got all of those. So we've got one for the whole business. We've got one for the shop team. We've got one for the business behind the scenes. We've got one with our production team in India where we manufacture. And there's some crossover. So my team might give you a different answer to how does Sarah use WhatsApp. Please stop messaging. But it just gives that flexibility and instant communication without needing to open up something else, because we are all on our phones too much.
Yeah, and you could end up spending the entire day leaving phone messages for someone, but I think a WhatsApp is so much easier for people to manage and pick up and respond to.
And voice messages on it as well is something that it's instant, but you can add a bit more personality to it without having to construct a full thing around it. And that's today's answer anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it as an answer. It's like you can get it off your plate and then someone else can pick it up.
Yes.
When they finish serving that customer or when they wake up or whatever it might be. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Okay, the carbon top tip. What's your favourite way to reduce the carbon footprint of an e-commerce store?
Have a de-junk. Clear out your old files, clear out your old emails, delete stuff. Multiple images, multiple files is a huge impact in terms of your digital sustainability, digital footprint, because we sort of think it's free and it's just, we can copy all these things. But in reality, what energy it takes for all of these big server centers and stuff to run, just don't send that extra email that says thanks when you don't need to. You have to swallow some of the politeness that's kind of ingrained, but just, clearing out your Google Drive or whatever online storage. Other options are also available, kind of thing.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I love that you brought that up. I've just gone through moving between two computers and installing Dropbox again, and looking through when you do that, anyone who's got Dropbox these days, if you reinstall it, they recommend you to choose which folders you sync, and there's almost like a, oh my god, as you go through the folders and go, there's 3 gig. I haven't worked on that project in 8 years. Why is that in there? So I am due a massive de-junk in the very near future because I've been freaked out by my own Dropbox holdings.
I think it is. And you get so much, I mean, storage, memory, everything has massively increased without us really realising. So it's now relatively cheap, and there's a relatively lot of it that you get with basic packages and tools and stuff for free. But when you look at it and go, oh my God, and everybody is guilty of keeping stuff, but just have one. You don't need, because I've noticed it when we look at ours, we're trying to do some work on our image library and all that stuff. Everybody saves their own versions. It's like, stop.
Yes, I know for a fact there are certain virtual summits we've run where there is the big heavy recording file saved somewhere, the finished version saved somewhere, probably both of those probably sitting on Dropbox. Then there's the version that sat on the summit system, whatever we ran the summit in, and then it's probably also on YouTube. And we ran that like 5 years ago. We're never editing that again. To be honest, we don't need anything but the YouTube version. So I've got one on my team currently doing a big old video audit for me, and then we will crush our cloud storage. So yes, as you can tell, you've hit a nerve with me. So I'm going to stop everybody, else I'm going to waffle on about that for the next hour. Sarah, you have been an awesome guest, but the audience want to know where they can find you and your shop. So how can they get in contact with you and your business on the web and social media, please?
Yes, that would be amazing. So website is youunderwear.com, Y.O.U Underwear. And so for everybody globally, and more locally, we've got the shop in Oxford in the historic covered market. If anybody knows the Oxford, come and find us there, and across all social channels as well at Y.O.U Underwear UK.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been fascinating chatting with you. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so much for giving up your time and sharing so much with the audience.
No worries. Thank you very much. It's been great.
Right then, what would be my key takeaways from my chat with Sarah? Well, having just continued to rant about cloud storage, think about cloud storage. And the one thing which she didn't mention, which we both agreed is very important, just before I said goodbye to her there, was stop attaching things to emails and send links to wherever you've saved it instead. Save so many gigs and stops filling up your inbox with weighty files as well. But I'm starting to rant about cloud storage again, so I won't do that. My takeaways from how Sarah's gone about building her business, I think the clarity she's finding from knowing what her values are, and then the way she was talking about segmenting those values into where they fit in the marketing activity and the content activity of the brand, between being ethical, sustainable, supply chain, low carbon, all that stuff it's what they do. They make it really obvious what they do. They make it clear to the customer. But the differentiator, the USP, the thing they want to talk about more is the period poverty piece. And that, I think, is such a great way in some ways of cutting through the uselessness but omnipresence of the word sustainability, for want of a different thing. And I think the way she was talking through how they are looking at scaling the business whilst maintaining those values is really fascinating. You see how much thought goes into that, of working out the right ways to do it. I hope you take a lot from this interview. I know I am. You can get your hands on our notes from this episode, including the top tips and links to the things we mentioned, by heading over to ecommercemasterplan.com/podcast, or you can use our direct to episode short links. Just put ecmp.info/the number of this episode into the URL bar and you'll go straight to the correct episode page. When you get to the website, please do add yourself to our email list so you don't miss out on any of the other things I share to help you improve your business, like our e-commerce explored webinar series. If you liked this episode, then make sure you check out episode 481 with Lucy from Bearkind, who was kind enough to do the intro to this guest. She sells socks, so a fairly similar product, and she's talking about how she builds that business and how being a B Corp has helped them grow. And if you want to know more about fashion, then why not go to ecmp.info/fashion, where you'll find all of our fashion episodes. Thank you so much for tuning into this and every episode that you do of the e-commerce masterplan podcast. I bring you a new interview every week because I want to inspire and help e-commerce business owners just like you to succeed and thrive with your businesses, including progressing along the path to net zero. So if you know someone this show can help, please tell them to listen to the e-commerce masterplan podcast. Hope you have a great week, and don't forget to keep optimizing.
Thank you for listening to the e-commerce masterplan podcast. Find out more at ecommercemasterplan.com/podcast.
If your tech stack is becoming a bottleneck to growth, it's time to replatform, and you should check out Shopline. Shopline is the modern commerce platform that's disrupting Europe as one of Asia's leading e-commerce platforms. Whether your bottleneck is setting up more sales channels like social commerce or expanding to new markets globally, Shopline takes care of everything from store setups, checkouts and payments to logistics and more. With single-click migration and out-of-the-box tools, they're there to help. The best part about it, you don't need to pay until your site is live. Here in the UK, they power brands like In The Style and Everything £5, whilst in Asia, they're the platform of choice for huge brands like Lego and Muji. If you want to scale, it's time to book your free trial or have a chat with one of the Shopline team. Find out what Shopline could do for you via ecmp.info/Shopline. That's ecmp.info/SHOPLINE.